Alright, hi, I'm Jeremy, and right now I'm going to be telling you everything I know for this part of the final review. Um, Even though on the final review sheet it gives you a list of names and battles and what you need to know and what you don't need to know, and it's all these sort of things, but the reason why I'm going to tell you it to you as a sort of a narrative is because the way I understand history is that I see it as sort of a way of one event leads to another event and another event and another event and another event. And so it's sort of history is a cause and effect sort of thing. So if you see how one thing happens and see how it affects everything else, that'll actually help you answer the final essay question for the final review. If you're not using this for a final review, just forget everything I'm saying because I'm doing it for my school, but that doesn't mean you don't have to learn too. So we're going to start with the very basic. We're going to go start with Greece and ancient Greece, and we're going to go, for this episode, we're going to go from Greece to all of its ages and go to Alexander and then go to Rome when it's republic, all the way to the empire, who you need to know, and then we're going to finish with Christianity, although I'm going to end with, we are going to talk about the fall of Rome, but we're going to end with Christianity. Alright, you ready? Let's rock. Alright, so we're going to talk about the Greeks. So geography. So it's basically a bunch of islands. It's hundreds and hundreds of islands. So there really isn't a giant mainland. Well, there is. It's called the Peloponnesus. But a large portion of Greece is just these little random islands. You sail some way, you see an island. You go another way, you see another island. So they're sort of in that way, it sort of isolates people. So now you're gonna go like, I'm from this island, I'm from that island, that from that island, and that sort of principle applies later into the mainland, where you're gonna have city-states. But more on that in a minute. Mountainous. It was very mountainous. There weren't any rivers. I mean, you had the ocean, you had the Aegean Sea. But you didn't have rivers, which is actually kind of surprising because most civilizations form near rivers. The Yellow River, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, but this is very special. So we're going to start there. So the first Greek civilization we know about are called the Minoans, and they were very popular in Crete, which is kind of like if you see a map of Greece, it's that kind of giant little island, the largest of the islands, that's Crete. So their capital was Knossos, and we don't know much about them because we can't really read what they wrote. They wrote in something called Linear A. So we can't read that. We can't read that. That's the only problem. We can tell like what their art is. A very famous depiction in Knossos is a man jumping over a bull. So, that's kind of interesting. But that's all we really know. We actually know very little. Then, so they lasted for, they were from 2,800 to 1,500 BCE. I'm just doing it that way because it's just super easy. 2,800 to 1,500 BCE, whatever. Then in around 1200 BC, we have the Mycenaean civilization, and they were pretty good. They conquered Knossos, and it was very successful for them. And this is where we get the legends of Troy and the Trojan War. So we're actually not sure if this war existed or not. We do know Troy existed. That's good. Thanks to a guy named Heinrich Schliemann. He investigated the area of what we now call Troy, but he found it, and he's like, yes, there obviously was a Trojan War. And we're all like, nah, you probably found a city, that's Troy, but we don't know if Troy suffered a siege by the Greeks, and if it's the same siege we're talking about. So that's what happened. So then, Mycenaean civilization was really good. We got Linear B. Just change that to a B. And this one we can read, and we're kind of getting used to the idea of writing stuff down. Linear B actually will make a comeback later. I'll explain why. So then we got the Dark Ages. Not the Dark Ages after the Roman Empire fell and all the chaos and stuff, but it was very similar actually, because the Dorians conquered from 1100 to 750 BCE, and they weren't as advanced. They probably were like the Buffy guys who didn't know how to read yum stuff, whatever. They weren't as advanced, so we didn't have any written records. So why do we know so about them? Well, we sort of know things about them because of oral tradition. This is when oral tradition became a thing. If I don't know how to write something down, how else am I going to convey my message? By speaking to you, by telling you stories, by telling you what happened to me yesterday, all that stuff. So we have oral tradition, and this is where we meet our first awesome Greek, Homer. And I'm going to tell you every single thing that we know about him. That's all we know. We know nothing, actually. We don't even know if he exists. For all we know, Homer can be one dude who wrote all these things down, and Homer could be another, like a group of dudes who wrote these things down collectively. And even when someone wrote these stories down, we don't really know if they're the originals, because these could have traveled through time, and so one detail changes into another detail, and that detail gets changed to another detail. All of a sudden, you have a completely different story with a completely different cast. So we don't know what's going on. So that's what we know about Homer. Absolutely nothing. But the Greeks like to personify him as a blind Greek man, an old man. So that's how we live. That's how we think of him. He's also very famous for supposedly writing, or just telling the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey. If you don't know what that is, I don't blame you. I didn't know when I was in 7th grade, but whatever. The Iliad is the story of the Trojan War, which is basically the Greeks fight against the Trojans. Troy is located in modern-day Turkey. It's at the very northwest area, and so those were the Trojans, and there was a huge battle, 10 years, and Homer only tells a really small portion of that story, the last year of the 10-year war, and just a little snippet about just a little riff-raff and all these little things there. And then we get the Odyssey. The Odyssey is like, what do you call it, a sequel? The Iliad 2? No, it's just called the Odyssey. And the Odyssey is really about, one of the main characters whose name is Odysseus, and Odysseus, it talks about how he gets home. Now, it took everyone maybe like a month, maybe less to get home, but for Odysseus it takes 10 years. 10 years, because he did something that was very terrible. He blinded the Cyclops, and the Cyclops turned out to be the son of Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. So it took him 10 years, and it was all about these clashes between youth and old, and what happens if you make one small mistake, then you have to pay for it for the rest of your life, and what certain precautions should you take when doing stuff. You don't need to know that, just I'm going on a nerd moment. You're going to hear that often. So, then we have the Archaic Age from 750 to 500 BCE. And this is where like things start getting more familiar with us. It's now like the gray area. We know like some things, not a lot, but we're getting there. So we have this idea called the polis. Now, remember how I said like there were little islands everywhere, and each little island was kind of like itself, and like it was, one island was different from another island, and you'd say I'm from island A or island B or whatever. It's the same thing that happens in the mainland. So all these cities are now becoming like city-states. That's what polis means, a city-state. So now people back then didn't say, oh, I am Greek. No, people said, no, I am Spartan. No, I am Athenian. No, I'm Theban. No, I'm Corinthian. All these little city-states formed all over the place. And they each had its own government, its own system of government, and all these little things that made each little one kind of different. So it's kind of nifty. So in most I would say, most city-states, you had an acropolis. Now, that basically means it's they have a fortified hilltop, so you'd have some stuff down there, and all of a sudden you have this little hill, and on top of that there would be a fortress, and then inside would be like all like the temples and all like maybe some dwellings there. That's what an Acropolis is. The most famous Acropolis is, of course, in Athens, which is why when you go to Athens, you will notice it's just flat, and all of a sudden it's round, and then right here you have the Parthenon. So that's what happens there. The idea of citizen begins to take shape. Now, a citizen is kind of is pretty different from what we call from our standards. So imagine you have a giant population, like a giant population. Only a sliver were actually Greek citizens. First of all, you have to be free. So slaves, you're done. Landowning. So if you were like free but you didn't have land, you're not a citizen. If you were not from the city, if you were not born in a city-state, you're not in. You have to, if you want to be an Athenian citizen, you have to be born in Athens. If you want to be a Spartan citizen, well, you first have to survive and all that stuff. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, you would have to be a citizen. You would have to be born there. You have to be adult. Not all the little kiddies get to be citizens. You have to be a strong man and all that stuff. And finally, which is unfortunately the worst, you have to be a man. You cannot be a woman. Women were not allowed. Women actually were like, this is like the beginning of like with all these horrible things against women. Like women have to do all these little household dainties, and the men get to go on and do all the little things, all their awesome things. So that's kind of sad. So then different governments start to form. You have the monarchy, which is basically one person rules. It's basically king, queen, that's it. You have an oligarchy, which is the wealthy kind of rule the area. That's basically it. Then you have an aristocracy, which is basically the same thing. Now the difference between an aristocracy and an oligarchy is, if you've read F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, you'll be familiar with the terms old money and new money. So basically, if you don't, old money is like money that you inherited and it's yours. It's been yours for like a long time, like in terms of generations. And new money means you just sprung the money. You just got it. It's very recent. So oligarchies were basically, they were about new money, and aristocracies were about old money. And to give you some examples of cities that were like that, Mycenae, before the Dorians ever came, they were the Mycenaeans had a king. They had a monarchy. Oligarchy, the Spartans had an oligarchy. And aristocracy, believe it or not, it was Athens. Now don't get too fretty because like you're like, oh, Athens, isn't that the birth of democracy? Yes, you are correct. But that was before we got democracy. They had an aristocracy. So now, since I just blabbed about democracy, I might as well talk about it. So here we go. Democracy. So it first started as you will have an assembly. You will have an assembly, which is basically like 400 or 500 men, citizens that are drawn by the lottery, and they have to be on part of the assembly, and they will vote on like specific matters and all that stuff. So it started basically, that's the core of the entire democracy idea. So we get our second Greek. His name is Draco. And Draco was, okay, he was the one who basically created the laws, and what is really famous about his laws is that they were super strict. And like, you couldn't break them, there were no exceptions, bupkis, zero, absolutely no chance. So, yeah, Draco got a reputation to be quite the harsh ruler. If something is called draconian, it's basically like very strict, very harsh, very dangerous. Then we get Solon. Now Solon is sort of like Draco, but not really. He decides to reform the idea of democracy. Before, when Draco said democracy is just following the law. Just following the law. And Solon was like, okay, we're going to change that. I need to figure out a way to get these dudes to actually like being part of the government. So he said, it is a duty to be part of the assembly. That's why if you do it, you are awesome. And all these guys bought it. They're like, oh yeah, I want to be on the assembly. I want to. So Solon kind of tricked them into doing it, but whatever. You know what? It worked. And then we have this guy named Cleisthenes, and it was at 508 BCE, and he is the one who officially invented democracy. He decided, basically, it should be ruled by the people. So that's what democracy means. Demos, which it means people, and kratos means rule by. So it literally means rule by the people. So that's what Cleisthenes did. We're going to talk about one last thing of the Archaic Age, and that's its education. Education had two parts. It was the body, and it was about the mind. So let's talk about the mind. So mind was basically what you would call nowadays speech and debate. If you could speak well, if you could argue for something that you truly believe in, you were like, oh my gosh, he is such a genius. Everyone loved you. If you couldn't, sucks for you. You weren't very popular. What a famous thing that Greeks did was they had symposiums, which is basically all the little nerdy guys get together at a party. It's like a nerd party, and they get drunk with wine that's not that's not hard. They pour a lot of water into it, so that way you don't get drunk, but not too drunk where you got punching everybody. No, it was just enough so you would open up. You would open up your mind. Because the Greeks do that when you, every day, you would be restraining information that you wouldn't want others to know. And sometimes that information could be critical about developing your personality and developing who you are and what your ideas are. So you would drink wine, you get drunk, and then you would start saying things like, I believe this, I believe that, and you should do this, and let me tell you why. That's really what a symposium was. Then you also had exercise of the body. Now, this means what exactly? Heavy lifting, all those things. If you go to my school, Zach-like works. Zach-like. So you would be exercising. The Greeks actually, I don't know why, but I guess I do, but they would pour oil on their bodies so they look shiny and kind of glamorous, kind of godlike, and they would go like, hey bud, yeah, I'm pretty shiny here, like all of that. Yeah, that's what they did. It was really that. So now we're gonna talk about the best, in my opinion, my favorite city-state of all. No, not Athens. Sparta. Sparta. Here we go. So, Sparta is on the mainland. It's on the Peloponnesus. If you actually pay attention to the map of Greece, you'll see you'll see the mainland, and it's connected by this little canal thing. If you go down there on the bottom half of the Peloponnesus, that's where Sparta is. And Sparta is known for being very hardcore. So, it was a military state, which basically means you were born, you were trained to fight in the military. The most important thing is to fight for Sparta. So, you were really supposed to actually believe that you had to defend Sparta, and if you didn't, if you couldn't, you're done. You were just killing the spot. So, we're going to talk about training a little bit. So you have so first of all, the first test is when you're born. Okay, everything's happy and grand. No, the elders come. If you are deformed, if you look too weak, if you look like you can't handle it, they literally throw you off. They literally throw you off a bridge. Or not a bridge, of a cliff. There we go, that's better. A cliff. Also, another test that they sometimes did is that when you're born, they pour wine on you. Now, wine, it's good. I didn't taste any, but I've heard, it's good. Except for newborns. For newborns, it's like cutting yourself and pouring alcohol onto it. Alcohol, well, it is alcohol. But the alcohol where it really stings and it really hurts. So if you cried too much when you were being poured in out with wine, yeah, you're done. You're kicked off. So then at the age of 7, all boys are taken away from their family and they begin to train in the military. and basically this is where hell starts. Bullying was encouraged. You were encouraged to steal. If you were caught, that was bad. Not because you were stealing, but because you were caught stealing. A famous story is actually a boy found a fox and was going to kill the fox, but when from a man. When the man saw that his fox was gone, he asked the boy, "Where is my fox?" The boy put the fox under his toga, I guess, and the fox started biting into him, and he was slowly dying, but he kept pressing forward. He's like, "I do not know where your fox is." When he finishes the conversation, he falls on the ground dead with the fox there, but the man was so amazed that the boy was willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of protecting his honor. At age 20, that's when you're kind of done with your training. You're kind of enlisted into the army, and that's when you actually get to go kill people. At age 30, you come out of the army, not completely. You come out so you can find a random chick and start procreating. So you have families and babies and all that stuff. So one day your son will be able to go and fight for the Spartan army. So, and then at age 60, you are officially retired from the army. You're done. You've served your purpose. We don't want an old bag kind of trying to kill random people. That'd be kind of scary. So there were three sort of classes. So you had the soldiers. These soldiers were considered the citizens. They were the ones who had all the authority. They had top priority of everything. Then you had what I call the perioikoi, which means the merchant class. So basically, they're the only ones who are allowed to go in and out of the city. They're allowed to do that, so that way you can trade and do all these little things, or maybe just bring in new information, even though that kind of seems strange. Also, random gifts that you're trying to sell would also kind of be scary. And finally, you have the helots. And the helots were what you would call the lowest of the low. They were random, they were captives of war. Basically, they were often targets for training. Like, if a Spartan boy wanted to, he can go sneak up behind a helot and it's start killing him or wrestling him. Or if the helot makes a noise or screams or something, and the guards know, then the boy gets in trouble for being caught. Not because you were killing an innocent person, actually, but you were caught. You were just caught. You couldn't be sneaky. So that leads to what the Spartans valued. They valued stealth. They valued group effort. They involved order. I'll explain why order is kind of important in group effort. You'll see later. The women of Sparta, they had household duties, but they actually were better off than most women. Like in Athens, they had more rights, especially since they were actually trained to fight, to do self-defense, so that way when the men leave off for a war, their city is vulnerable to attacks. The women will go like, "Psych, we're gonna kill you all." That's basically how it works. So that's it. We're gonna talk about the classical age of Greece. This is from 500 to 338 BCE. So we're gonna talk about the military. So you had this idea of a hoplite. I'm gonna write that down. You know, screw you, Homer. Hoplite. If you can read that. Sorry if you can't. A hoplite was basically a Greek foot soldier, and there were three essential elements to a hoplite, and that was its shield, its spear, and its helmet. So its shield was the most important one. So basically the purpose of the shield is you would have it in your left hand, and you'd be standing right here. The purpose of your shield was to protect your left side, but when you're standing in a formation, it's supposed to protect the right side of your person standing next to you. So that way the whole front line is literally just a row of shields. And that leads me to the second most important thing, the spear. So contrary to maybe what 300 has to say, they use spears, but not swords. Swords were like their last resort. Like, if I lost my shield, then I'll get out my sword and start killing people. But the spear was really important because it would be kind of like sticking out between the shields. So when your enemy is running towards you, trying to get you, they'll just be stabbed by the spear. They won't ever get to you. It's really valuable, like, to stop the enemy. Then you can stab them, knock them, stab the next few, knock them, stab the next few, and keep going until you eventually win the war. Or no, not the war. Let's not get too carried away. The battle. You win the battle. So, and then of course, the helmet. Oh man, I'm just gonna be honest with you right now. The Greek helmet is like my favorite armor of all time. And the very reason why I like it is the very reason why they wore it. It was intimidating. Okay, yeah, you had all these like little like barbarians with all these furs, stuff like that, or whatever. But then you have these like hardcore Spartans, like, showing their muscles, and they have their helmet, and you can't even see their eyes, you just see the blackness. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. Nerd moment. So one hoplite, okay, big deal. Actually, it was made like of heavy metal, so you would just be weighted down. And that's why I said for the Spartans, they relied on group effort. You would have a whole block of these dudes. So they would like be like moving all, it's like a giant like tank thing. Like, they turn, stab, turn, kill, like knock, all these awesome things that basically made them sort of indestructible. I mean, yeah. So now we're gonna get to, we're almost done with Greece. We're gonna sort of start with the Persian Wars. So we're gonna go back to Anatolia. If I haven't mentioned that before, Anatolia is basically modern day Turkey. So in case someone asks like, oh, I went to Turkey, you can just say you just went to Anatolia or something like that, just to sound more awesome like that. I don't know, it might work. So you have the Persian Wars, and there's a little city, like, I guess at the very edge of Turkey, facing the Aegean Sea, called Ionia. And Ionia led a revolt against the Persian Empire. And so, okay, what's one little city gonna make a difference? Is one little city gonna like actually like destroy the entire Persian Empire? No, it's not. And that's why they said, yo, Athens, we need your help. Can you help us fight these Persians? And the Athenians are like, yeah, sure, bro, I got you. We respect each other, Greeks. Okay? And Darius, I believe, the Great, that's what he's called, he was pissed. He was like, whoa, with the Athens, okay, hold on. I'm conquering, but this is my business. This is not your business. You should back off. And then he's like, okay, you know what? Screw that entire sentence. I'm going to get my revenge on Athens for pissing me off. There we go. So he sends an army to sail across the Aegean Sea and to teach Athens a lesson. So he vows to destroy Athens, so he's sailing, and then comes the first major battle. The battle at Marathon at 490 BCE. And that's basically the Athenian soldiers are getting ready to fight, and they are wondering if they can get Spartan help. So he sent this one runner dude to run from all the way from Athens to Sparta to get help. So this guy, whose name is Phidippides, he runs all the way to Sparta, non-stop, going. He's the awesome runner. He asks Sparta, and he expects like Sparta's gonna go, oh yeah, sure, bro, we gotcha. Sparta's like, no, we're not helping you. We are busy in the middle of a ceremony, so go away. So Phidippides ran all the way back to tell him the great news that the Spartans were not coming. So that sucked for the Athenians. So the Athenians decided, screw the Spartans, we're going to do this on our own. And they did it, and they won, and it was so great. And then right when they win, they realize that there's another Persian army, Darius is slowly moving towards Athens. So they stop them. This little part of the story is very controversial if the Persians ever came to Athens or not. But I'm just going to change the story a little bit to that way it sort of makes sense. the Persians are kind of coming closer, but the Athenians eventually beat them. And then they say, okay, great, now how are the actual citizens of Athens going to know that we won? Yo, Phidippides, come here. Can you run all the way to Athens and tell them that we won? So he's like, okay, I got it. I'm running. He runs all the way to Athens. And he says the most famous words, in my opinion, of all time. He says, Nike, Nike, which means victory. It means victory in Greece. And then right when he says that to the Athenians, he collapses on the floor and dies of a heat stroke. So, it's kind of sad, you know. It kind of makes you depressed. But anyway, that's the story of Phidippides. I lied about the whole Persians coming towards Athens. Although, that will become important basically now. So, with the Battle of Marathon away, Darius is like, oh man, I couldn't defeat them. Okay, I'm going home, you know what? I'm just going. He goes all the way back to Persia because he's super sad that he lost to the Athenians. And his son, Xerxes, is like, whoa, Dad, okay, you know what? I'm going to take revenge for disrespecting my father. So it's like a double revenge thing for the Athenian revolt and for insulting Darius. But although the latter is more important to Xerxes because it touches him more to the heart. So he goes. He wants more revenge. So he goes, and the next major battle is for Thermopylae, which is at 480 BCE. And this is where 300, the movie, comes into play. So basically, they realize, okay, the Persians are coming. We're going to have to make a diversion. So that way we can slow them down so that the Athenians get a plan. So 300 Spartans with a bunch of other men decide to do a suicide mission. And they were led by King Leonidas, or if you want to be more fancy, Leonidas. But I'm just going to call him Leonidas because that's just a better name. Anyway, they stand and the battle goes on for a really long time. And then one stupid person tells the Persians like, hey bud, okay, you're so stupid that you don't even see the plan I have. Watch this. There's actually a secret route behind where the Greek camp is. If we can march a size of like a part of our army around that, then we can get the Greeks and destroy them. So, unfortunately, that's what happens. And the Greeks are slaughtered and are killed. And there's actually a memorial over there that says like, this is where King Leonidas and his army lay. Please pay attention for what battle has occurred here. Very sad. So then the Persians start coming, and the Athenians are like, okay, we have to, what are we going to do? We have to make a plan. What are we going to do? Oh, I have an idea. Why don't we leave the city? So that's what they do. They go to a nearby area, they go on their boats, and they sail sort of near Athens, but they sail kind of, it's not that close. And the Persians go and they see that there's no one there. So Xerxes says, burn the city down. Let's burn it down. So they do, and that was really sad. And the Athenians are like, ooh, man, I'm going to fight you now. So that's basically the feeling there. And so the next major battle is the battle at Salamis at 480 BCE. And the main character in this is a guy named Themistocles. Themistocles is this awesome general. He knows how to plan everything. And for this battle, he's going to use a special ship. It's actually the most iconic ship. It sort of looked like this. With like a little eye right here, whatever. That is called a trireme. And so the purpose of a trireme is, well, let's first analyze the name. Tri means three, right? You knew that since like 7th grade. Alright? Tri means three. So, why does 3 have to do with this? Because there are 3 layers of rowers. And these rowers have it's a giant ship with 3 layers of rowers, both on each side, and it's just a giant man-powering ship that basically takes you and it's really fast. And so what makes this a weapon of sort is because this part right here, kind of like the pig nose, if you will, that's made of pure bronze. And so the purpose of that is to is to sort of have your boat running at at a fast speed, and then when an enemy boat is facing that way, your boat can run and basically use that bronze tip to smash through the enemy ship, and then go back, and then the enemy ship will drown. It will sink, and all the sailors will drown, and then they'll just shift. They'll just shift to another ship and start going after them. So that's what Themistocles used. And now, of course, he realized the Persian fleet is pretty weak, but it's still a large number. So he has to think of a way how to get them into the playing field he wants. So he gets this dude to run all the way to the Persians, and he says, "Persians, buddies, okay, if you even touch me, I have really good news for you. You see those Greeks over there? They're not prepared for anything. If you go and attack them, man, you'll win the battle." And Xerxes buys this. He buys it. He's like, "Ooh, this is the moment I've been waiting for." So he gets his entire fleet to go into this little strait. And by the time he gets there, he sees all the Greeks are ready for battle. And then because of his giant ships, they're trapped. And so he knows he has to face them instead of retreating. And what makes the Greeks and the Greeks and the Persians different is that the Persians really just kind of use their boats like they were really big, so they're really big targets for the Greeks. So the Greeks won, and so that was really bad. So the Persian fleet is destroyed. They're gone. Now you have to go against the Persian army, and then you have the Battle of Plataea at 479 BCE, and that's when Athens and Sparta join together to fight against the Persians, and they win. It's the only time Athens and Sparta are going to be best friends, because later there's going to be trouble. So the Athenians come with all these other Greek city-states, and they're like, "Guys, we did it. We beat the we beat the Persians, and we are proud of ourselves, and we're going to do this. And we are awesome, and therefore we should make a league that unites us all, not as Athenians and Spartans and Thebans and all that stuff. We are going to be united as the Greeks." So they form the Delian League, and that's basically it's basically an economic and military system where if ever a giant enemy, basically a huge enemy that attacks Greece in general, all the city-states will give troops and give ships and be ready to fight and defend against the invaders. It's also where, it was also used to put money in. It was put into sort of the Delian League Bank, and that money would be used on soldiers, on armor, particularly on ships. Now, you'll see that this league actually doesn't work, because Athens decides, well, since we kind of did the most work in the Persian Wars, we should be the leaders. So that kind of pisses off Sparta, and so the Spartans actually were never part of the Delian League. Athens said, "Let's not include the Spartans, because let's just not. I don't want it." So they didn't, and that kind of pissed off the Spartans. So now we have the Athenian Golden Age, and this is where everything is happy-go-lucky. We have intellectualism, you have the arts, you have the economy, all of it's boosted. It's like the 1920s. So you have this dude named Pericles. I'm going to write his name down, because he's a pretty important guy. And if I can get that. Okay, here we go. Pericles. There, sorry, I have to fix that. Pericles. So, he and his wife, Artemisia, I think that's her name. Let me see. As you can tell, I am using notes. I lied. Aspasia. Artemisia, I think, was actually a Trojan woman who fought at, not a Trojan woman, a Persian woman who fought at the Battle of Salamis and escaped. But anyway, Aspasia was Pericles' wife, and they were what you would call a power couple. And they ruled together, and they made the best decisions. And a lot of those decisions actually came from stealing money from the Delian League to buy stuff to make Athens more beautiful. So Pericles is like, well, yeah, I mean, we deserve it, but many others were like, dude, you can't just steal other people's money. And Athens actually at this point is actually demanding that other city-states basically pay up to the Athenians and give them tribute. So this is why I say, actually I didn't say it, this is basically Athenian imperialism. And that's kind of mean. You know, this is kind of one of the reasons why I don't like Athens, and you'll see why I like the Spartans later. You'll see that. Pericles wanted to expand the empire, expand democracy, and to sever ties with Sparta. He's also during this time we were introduced to the idea of ostracism. Now, if you ever learned that vocabulary, where that basically means to kick out, to get rid of, to shoo away, to purge. So basically what the Greeks did is that every year they would have jars of people who the people thought were too dangerous to stay among them, or too powerful, or too wealthy, or too successful. They might just be a tyrant and destroy democracy. So they would write someone's name on a jar, or they would write someone's name, actually on a jar, and put and people would put stones in or whatever, or sometimes you would have jars and then people would write the name of the person they didn't like and put it in the jar. And whoever got voted the most was kicked out for 10 years. And unfortunately, remember Themistocles, our old buddy guy who won the Battle of Salamis? He got ostracized. And it's kind of sad. I mean, I don't know why people thought people didn't like him. I guess they thought he was too successful as a general. He might be too strong, I guess. But yeah, that's with ostracism. Then Pericles. So this is why what Pericles does is very controversial. So yes, he did steal money, but was it worth it? Some people say it was, because he built the most famous thing that Greece can ever had, the Parthenon. Yes, he built the Parthenon for Pallas Athena. Just in case you need to know that, it's Pallas Athena. Sparta, after, Sparta sees Athens stealing all this money, and Sparta gets kind of nervous, He gets really nervous that Athens might be getting a bit too much power, the two decide to go to war. And the Spartans win. They win, and they say, okay, both decided to say, we're going to have a 30-year peace, where we're not going to, argue with each other, we're not going to get to war, we might go to war, we're not going to do all these little things, and we're just going to be in peace. But after those 30 years are done, watch your back. So that's what really happened. They were left. Everyone was left alone. But then Sparta still gets nervous, and then this is when the Athenian Golden Age, it just dies. At 431 to 404 BCE, we have the Great Peloponnesian War, and this is again versus Athens versus Sparta. If the one thing you should know is that Athens was more prone to have a strong navy, and Sparta was more prone to have a strong army. So basically, land versus sea. So it did. By the way, if you're still wondering why I hate the Athenians, it's because of they just ripped everyone off. So that's why. But Pericles is like, okay, no problem. We just have to somehow get the Spartans to go on water, and we can have a naval battle, and we can keep their asses. So, all was going well, but then in 430, we have a plague that kills 1/3 of the Athenians, including Pericles himself. Why? Well, Pericles decided to have this sort of thing where, if this is the water right here, and this is land, he decided to have a little tower here, and a little area here, so that way troops could be move from here to there, and all the Athenian citizens were living in here. Now, any smart person would know that if you have a bunch of people in one area, what's gonna come? Disease. And disease is what kills everyone. So with that, it doesn't look good for the Athenians. So they lose again, and they have a 4 to 5 year truce in 421. So then Athens is like, okay, fine. You know what? If we can't beat these Spartans because we're too weak, then let's go for Sicily. Now, why Sicily? Well, one, it's actually very. You'll see later in these episodes that Sicily is going to be pretty important because it's whoever owns Sicily in a way owns the Mediterranean. So it was very valuable to the Athenians, and it was also it was actually an ally to Sparta. So it's like, if I can't kill the main dude, I'll just kill his little side dudes so I can eventually kill the main dude. So that's what they do. And you have this guy named Alcibiades, who's like, I'm totally gonna beat the Sicilians and we're gonna kick their asses. Psych, the Sicilians are actually pretty good, and they actually repel all these attacks. And basically, the Athenians send in a fleet. That gets destroyed. Another fleet. That gets destroyed. Until basically, almost the entire fleet is destroyed by 405, and Athens surrenders. At 404, Athens officially loses the war. Athens surrenders. Sparta is the winner, but it's like, yeah, Sparta won, but they spent so much money and so many men, and now they're in a weakened state that basically all of Greece is just destroyed. And that will play a pretty big role right now again. You have we're gonna call it the Hellenistic Greece, and this is the age of Alexander. Alexander who? Alexander the Great. We'll get to him in a minute. So, if you gotta start with the boy, you gotta talk about the dad. So the dad's name was Philip II. Philip II was an excellent military tactician. He wanted to develop weapons that would easily turn the tide of a battle and eventually lead him to conquer everything. So his first step was to conquer Greece. Now, first of all, Philip wasn't Greek. I'm talking about Greece, but no, he was not Greek. He actually was, you go up, directly above Greece is a place called Macedonia. And Macedonia was basically an outsider to Greece. Greece viewed anyone who was not Greek a barbarian. And actually, funny, the term barbarian comes from the word bar, which is basically, that's how the Greeks thought anyone who couldn't speak Greek or who wasn't Greek spoke. Bar, 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 bar. That's how the Greeks kind of made fun of anyone who's not Greek. What are they saying? Bar, 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 whatever. So that kind of sucked for Philip. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna take these Greeks down. So after the Peloponnesian War, all the Greeks are kind of just tired. They're struggling. Half of them are dead. All this chaos, and Philip is like, the time has come to conquer. So he attacks, and he uses actually the phalanx. So it's kind of like using fighting fire with fire. So he uses the phalanx, and he actually makes an addition. He creates the sarissa, which is I believe in 1816 whatever. Basically a heck of a long spear that was basically almost 2 times as long as your average old Joe spear. So he won the battle. He was actually fighting against Athens and Thebes the majority of the time, and he fought against this dude named Demosthenes, who's basically a kind of a Pericles, Themistocles guy, but nevertheless he loses. So Philip is like, yes, I have won. So he conquers most of Greece. I'm not going to say all because there's one exception. Sparta. Sparta is the only exception to this. And Philip decides, I'm going to send them a letter. And he sends them a letter saying, if you do not submit to my orders, your city will be destroyed and ruined, and I will take all your men, kill them all, take all the women, and make life hell for you guys. The Spartans reply with one word. Leaving this for dramatic effect. And I find this word to be pretty Pretty funny. If. So when Philip gets this, he's like, oh. You know what? I'm just gonna leave them alone. You know what? Okay, it's fine. You know, I'm just gonna do my own little thing right there. Yeah. So he leaves them alone, and he says, all right, now that I am ruler over all of you guys, I'm gonna make something very clear. Go back to doing whatever you're doing. I don't want to change your culture, change your history, change your arts, change your panties or whatever. Actually, no, the Greeks didn't wear pants. They wore togas because they thought pants were barbaric. But anyway. The Greeks were like, okay, that's chill, that's pretty good, alright. So now Philip II's like, okay, now I own all of Greece. Where to next? Ah, the Persian Empire. And he claims like he's gonna conquer the Persian Empire because they burned down Athens, and the Athenians and all the other Greeks are like, yeah, shut up, alright, we get it, alright, you just want to be the greatest conqueror of all time. So he goes, and he gets there, and he has a party, and he says, tomorrow we will leave to attack Persia, and then he's assassinated. Kind of sad, but he is assassinated. And so, who is left to take the role of the dead king? The son, who is now king, Alexander III, or who you might better know him as Alexander the Great. So the way things kind of worked was, Philip built the army. He built everything He had all the right materials. Now Alex had to use those tools to actually do the deed. It's kind of like if you have a box of Legos. Philip prepared the pieces. He organized the little pieces into little areas. He told you what you need to do, how you need to do it. But then it's actually Alex who's the one who does everything. So actually, a bit too much credit goes to Alex. But of course, you know, I'm Alex's #1 fan, and I just love that guy. Even though people are like he was such a horrible person, I'm like, no, he's cool. So Alex is a pretty cool dude. So first was the battle at the Granicus River. And before I get to that, let me actually tell you a little bit of things about him. Let me just show you how awesome this guy is. And this will probably change. This is no ordinary battle. I'm going to introduce to you the Alexander the Great. So first of all, he's 20 years old. So, you know, he's not a little kid going, let's attack them, let's attack that. And why am I doing an Elmer Fudd impression? But he also was personally tutored by Aristotle. I didn't mention this before. Aristotle and Plato came along, and they were like the biggest thinkers of all time, and they had all these awesome things. So Aristotle was his personal tutor. So I mean, it's kind of like having the greatest mind of all time, your personal tutor. I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, at least to nerds. He loved Homer. He loved Homer so much, like I do. Like I just love this book right here, The Odyssey. The Odyssey. I recommend this book to you, by the way. It's a really good book. Okay, you go away. So then you have Homer, and he loves Homer so much he claims he is the descendant of Achilles. And if you don't know who Achilles is, he's claimed to be the greatest warrior of all time, the most warlike, the greatest of every single Greek soldier and Greek hero of all time, the greatest, Achilles. So that's really good for Alex, and he uses that to his advantage, and he tells them, I am basically a demigod, and I am awesome like this, and his troops are like, we love you, man. So one of the things that makes Alex so awesome is that his troops are so loyal. They are really loyal to him. They will go to the farthest areas of the world, and they will conquer everything for Alex. Well, until the very end. We'll get to that later. So now, back to Granicus River at 334. So, I'm just going to get to this really quickly. Alex wins. He wins against the Persians. And Darius III gets really worried. This is the first time he's like, oh, okay, let me actually pay attention. Let me actually be serious about this. So then the Battle of Issus in 333. Alex wins again, and he's conquered all of Anatolia. Like I said, Turkey. 332, he goes to Egypt, and he is claimed to be the liberator. He is actually deified. Actually, along the way going to Egypt, he stops by Israel, and he befriends the Jews, and so that's another awesome point for me. He was nice to the Jews. So then he goes to Egypt, and that another thing, like Sicily, Egypt is very valuable. It has a lot of grain, a lot of supplies, a lot of gold. Basically, anyone who owns Egypt is basically kind of rich. It's pretty good. The last battle is at Gaugamela, which is at 331, and this is Darius' last battle with Alex before he is assassinated. When Alex actually finds out about Darius' assassination, he runs all the way and he tracks down the guy who killed Darius, and kills him. It's kind of like, man, I hated you, but you were awesome. I'm gonna avenge you. He even married Darius' daughter, Roxana. Oh, no, not Roxana. That's a different person. We'll get to that later. Roxanne. Which is kind of like a Hollywood story. But anyway. 326, you have the Indus Valley. And the Indus Valley, if you don't know, that's basically India. And they're right there. They're about to go, and his troops say, Alex, we've been fighting for 10 effing years. We haven't seen our wives in a long time. We want to go home. Actually, change that. We will go home. We are going to mutiny against you if you don't agree. So Alex is like, but, fine. All right, fine. We'll go home. So, if you notice, well, actually, because I've been talking about this really quickly. Alex never lost the battle. The only battle he ever sort of lost was the battle of his soldiers. And he lost to that because he strained out their loyalty. But other than that, yeah, that's Alex for you. So kind of sad how it ends, and he dies in 323 in Babylon. So kind of makes you sad. If I'm being sad too much, that's history. It makes me emotional. But okay, we're gonna talk about his legacy. So he was considered one of the greatest conquerors of all time, and he conquered all the Persian Empire. He conquered, basically, he got to India. He went from Greece to India, so that's pretty good. He also spread the idea of Hellenism. So Hellenism is basically Greek-like. So he spread Greek ideas, Greek philosophy, Greek culture, Greek stories, all these places. He even told his troops to intermarry with the indigenous people. I guess that's the appropriate term. With the people he conquered, so that way they would kind of mix and be more Greek-like. So he's also known for his exploration, that thirst to go and go and go and keep going and not stopping. That thirst for exploration is what he's also really known for. And then, because Alexander died, his empire was split up between three of his generals. So you had Seleucus, who got Anatolia and Persia. Some people say he was the one who got the worst deal because there isn't much value with that. Then you have Antigonus, who took down Greece and Macedonia. So yeah, he's the middle dude. And the guy who actually makes the most off of this is Ptolemy. It's not. I'll spell that out for you because it's actually pretty complicated. Well, not really, but. Ptolemy. You would just spell it how you think it was, but then you had a P. I don't know why. No one says Ptolemy. You just say Ptolemy. And people say Ptolemy got the best deal because he was in other words, he got Egypt. And as I said, Egypt, moolah, moolah, moolah. No other way of describing that. So then you were going to talk about the post-Alexander life. So this is where intellectualism comes back. So we're going to talk about science and technology. So you have Aristarchus, and he is the first guy in the entire world to say the sun is the center of the universe and the earth revolves around that. So we all go like, okay, big deal. But then you'll see why I make a big deal about this. Ptolemy, a different Ptolemy, by the way, different Ptolemy. This Ptolemy is more studious. He's the nerdy version of Ptolemy. He says no. Why are you so stupid? Everyone knows that the Earth is the center of the universe, and the sun and all the other planets revolve around it. So it's kind of like we start with nothing, and then we make progress by supporting the heliocentric theory, and then we go back down because Ptolemy said no. So now that cycle's going to keep going on and on forever about heliocentric, geocentric theory until we all establish that the sun is the center of the universe. I mean, it's kind of obvious. So then you have Eratosthenes. I just call him circumference dude because he's the guy who measured the circumference of the Earth. Okay, yeah, he was wrong, but he was pretty spot on. Pretty spot on. Like it was almost completely accurate. And so I mean, you have to give him credit for that. He was also the head librarian at the city of Alexandria. I'm going to pause right here and talk to you about Alexandria. So can you guess who founded Alexandria? We talked about him like just now. Yes, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, of course, he had to think of the name of the city that he wanted to build, and of course, he called it after himself, Alexandria. And so Alexandria, he built. There was a giant lighthouse, the lighthouse at Alexandria. And that was called the Pharaoh, not the Pharaoh of Egypt, but like a Pharaoh as in like the Greek word for lighthouse, which if you go to my school, that's why we call the guys who guide the new kids around the pharaohs, because they are the lighthouses that guide the ships into the mainland. So Alexandria also had this incredible library. This library that was like basically took all the information out of any new foreigner and they wrote it down in Greek and then they put it into the library and stored it. And it would have been such a great thing if we still had today, because some nincompooper basically burnt the city down. I think it was Julius Caesar, so F you, Julius Caesar. Then we have Euclid, and he's considered the father of geometry. So he was alive during this time, and he made his big deal about that. Then you have Archimedes, and Archimedes is famous for three things. So he's famous for his Archimedes claw, and that's basically a giant crane that has the ability to grab an enemy ship, pick it up, crush it, and that's it. He's also famous for his Archimedes screw, which is basically a screw spinning, and you can have water travel up. Then you have his most famous thing is his discovery of density, with his whole Eureka story and his ideas about how things have a sort of solids displace a certain amount of liquid relative to their mass. And also he discovered, like I said, discovered buoyancy. So you can thank you can thank Archimedes when you take your test about buoyancy and density. Have fun, kiddos. Then you have this. So I talked about science and technology. So now you have philosophy, and philosophy makes a play. So you have this guy named Zeno, and Zeno is the founder of Stoicism, and basically, the entire crux of Stoicism is happiness is found in the search for truth. Repeating again, happiness is found in the search for truth. Then you have this guy named Epicurus, and he created Epicureanism, so very original there. And he said the secret to life is the search for pleasure, where there is no control over life itself. So they're the guys who are like, I embrace death. So they're pretty hardcore. I kind of like them. Then you have my favorite philosopher of all time, Diogenes. So Diogenes is just so wacko that I just love him. If you ever seen Seinfeld, the TV series, the old TV series, then you will know one of the main characters, his name is Kramer. If you know who that is, he's just like that. He's wacko. He's way out of there. He is the founder of cynicism, which is basically humans need to live in harmony with nature. So he lived in a legitimate jar. He shunned any material. He shunned anything that you could buy, anything a symbol of luxury. He's like, screw that. He was naked. He didn't want anything. He didn't have any shame either. He actually he would go to a party and he'd just pee on the guy standing next to him. He also carried a lantern, and everyone's like, Diogenes, why are you carrying a lantern that doesn't even work? And he says, I am searching for a pure and true man. So basically, someone with an honest soul, So that's basically Greece. That's all you need to know about Greece. Wow. So what did we learn? Wow, we learned quite a lot. We talked about Homer, and we talked about the Trojan War. We talked about the Mycenaeans. We talked about we talked about Athens, Sparta. We talked about what it is to be a citizen. What is it to have a polis? What is the assembly? And we talked about the Peloponnesian War. We talked about the Persian War. We talked about Alexander the Great. So that's Greece. Now, if you think I was done, fully on you. If you can see, I'm not looking, trying to get up there. This little thing right here, it spells Rome. We're going to be talking about Rome now. I don't know how long that would take, but okay. Okay, 3 pages. And so I just did basically 4 pages. So sit back and have another lesson with me about the Romans. Here we go. All right. Rome was fictionally founded by 2 twins, Romulus and Remus. So Rome started off. Actually, it didn't exist. We're gonna start in Alba Longa, which is a city. If this is Rome right here, Alba Longa is right here, really close. So, long story short, 2 babies are raised by a wolf. They realize that they're actually the true heirs of the king of Alba Longa. They kill the true king. They become king. They decide to found their own city. Romulus kills Remus over an argument. Romulus becomes the first king of Rome. So if you thought I was going to start talking about the Republic, like I said, fully on you. No, I'm not talking about the Republic just yet. Rome actually started off as a monarchy and had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kings. Now, I'm not going to list all of them to you, but you just need to know Romulus was the first one. You should also know that near Alba Longa and the Romans, you had this kind of area, and they were called the Etruscans. The Etruscans had a huge influence over Rome and its culture and its ideas. So, actually, four of those kings were actually Etruscan. It's kind of sad how it all sort of ends for the Etruscans, because the last Etruscan king, whose name is Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud, he gets deposed by the people, and Lucius Brutus says, I think it's Lucius Brutus, yeah. He says, okay, we are now going to issue a republic, and we are not going to have a king anymore. If that name Brutus sounds familiar to you, it should, because he's actually the great something of Brutus, who will play a role later. So we're going to talk about the Republic here. So you have so the Republic was founded in 509, And so you have the plebeians and the patricians. So basically, the patricians were like all the wealthy guys and all the guys who had all the money and all that awesome stuff, and the plebeians were basically, for a lack of anything, for a lack of words, everyone else. So things were kind of chilling all right for them, and then all of a sudden the plebeians were like, you know what, we're not being treated fairly. Hey, patricians, start treating us fairly. The patricians are like, no, we're not going to treat you fairly. So they're like, I bet if we left, the entire city of Rome would fall into like a pit of chaos. And the patricians are like, yeah, right. So the plebeians are like, okay, we're going to leave. The plebeians leave. The patricians are like, we got this. Like, maybe like a day later, they're like, oh, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. Plebeians, we need your help now. And basically the plebeians are like, okay, bud, but we're gonna have to make some reforms here. So they make the 12 tables, which is basic. It was created in 451 BCE, and it basically gave more rights to the plebeians, and also because laws could change very quickly, they just posted these laws on like in front of everyone. And so that way, if something happened, they could refer to that, and if someone didn't know the law, they would technically have no excuse for knowing the law, because it's basically right there in the middle of the city for everyone to read. So then you have these new government positions, and so we're going to start with the main one. This guy is called the consul. So actually, not main guy, main guys. There were two consuls. So like, they could check each other's power, and also they could, if one need to go lead an army to like raid a village or something, the other one can stay in Rome and govern. Then you had this guy would be like equivalent. These guys would be equivalent to the executive branch nowadays in the United States. Then you have the praetor, whose name. Not his name, which basically is a judge, is the judicial branch. You had a dictator, so this is kind of like, well, exactly what it is. An absolute ruler who rules, but in certain, it's only, there's only supposed to be a dictator in certain emergency situations. It's kind of like that box that, and they fire, like there's a thing that says break if there's a fire. So it's kind of like that, where like if there's an emergency, we will elect one person to be a dictator to save Rome from all this chaos. So that's what they do. So then you have a quaestor, who is an accountant, and he's in charge of financial affairs. So that's a pretty good job. Then you have the aedile. He is in charge of grain supply, and oddly enough, he's in charge of certain games, public games, which involves like gladiator fights or chariot racing and all that good stuff. Then you had the censor. He's basically in charge of measuring population. And then also the most important one is the Senate, and this is supposed to be for the legislative branch. Let me see if there's anything. Certain terms for the military. You should know that a legion is 5,000 infantry. A century is 80 infantry. So I don't know how he have groups of 80 that actually add up to 5,000, but whatever. And also, you also have auxiliary soldiers, and these guys are not Roman soldiers. So basically, if I'm a Roman and I conquer this territory, it's filled with these barbarians, let's just say, I'm going to call them barbarians, and I decide to enlist them in my armies, well, they are automatically auxiliary soldiers. They will fight. They will basically be fighting with me, but they're not actually Roman. So now we're going to talk about the Punic Wars. This is what I would call a tale of woe. but you'll see why. So you should meet this one guy called, land called Carthage. Now Carthage is basically in modern day Tunisia. It is basically North Africa, and it was a Phoenician colony, basically a Lebanese, Israel, Palestine area, Levant, I'll just say, Levant area that sailed and made a colony there. It was founded by Queen Dido, and it grew as a city. So Carthage actually, in Phoenician, or it's pronounced Karakadesh, and that means new city. So it was like a new city, new opportunity, new way to start a life. So many people came there. It relied on trading, specifically like maritime trade, and so it became really powerful. And they decided to kind of go for Sicily. So as I said before, Sicily is pretty important. Like if you own Sicily, you own the entire Mediterranean. Especially like tradings and all that stuff. Now, who else is also trying to go for Sicily? Rome. So they both kind of meet at Sicily, and it's kind of like that time when like you're with your friend, and you see something that you both want, so you both kind of just approach it nicely, and then you kind of just like nudge each other, saying like, okay, it's mine. No, it's mine. And you get like such a huge argument that you like end up like pushing each other and pulling each other and trying to kind of push them so you can take it for yourself. That was kind of like what was happening for the Carthaginians and the Romans. They both got to Sicily, and they're like, okay, Carthage is like, okay, Rome, go away. We got it first. And Rome's like, no, what the hell, man? We got it here first. So they decide to go to war, and they go to war, and unfortunately, they lose. So Rome's like, okay, now that we have won, we're gonna first of all take all this money from you, so you're pretty poor, and then we're gonna basically kind of control you from a little while, from afar back. But basically, we're just gonna restrict some things that you can do, and then you'll be good to go. And Carthage is like, F you. So then Carthage is kind of moping around, doing nothing, just chilling, and then you have this general named Hannibal, and Hannibal's like, okay, I am going to take down the Romans. It's actually, according to legend, little Hannibal, 9 years old, wanted to go see his father, Hamilcar Barca, go into battle. And the father said, no, I'm not going to let you. And Hannibal's like, please, I want to go, I want to see you kill random dudes. And he's like, okay, I will let you go, but you have to swear an oath to me. He's like, yeah, sure, I promise. And so the oath was that if you want to watch, then you have to prove to me, and you will have to prove for the rest of your life that you will always have a deep hatred for Rome, and you will always go and you will always declare war on them, and they will be your enemies for life. And Hannibal's like, I honor that. So when Hannibal grows up, he accepts this sort of vow, and he decides, okay, so I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna try and draw the Mediterranean for you, because it's kind of difficult. This is Rome, this is Sicily, this is Sardinia and Corsica. Then you have all this other stuff. Here's Spain, here's France, England, whatever. All this other lovely stuff. And then you have Africa, and then here you have Israel, whatever. Okay, so Carthage is right here. Now, they both tried going for Sicily, but that failed. So Hannibal is going to go this way, cross into Spain, go all the way around, cross the freaking Alps. He actually brings war elephants. So it's like, oh my gosh, man. I mean, elephants were pretty scary, actually. So the elephants came down, and they actually successfully crossed the Alps, and they basically went into Rome. Now, instead of going for Rome, they go for all the little side cities and say, okay, we're going to attack Rome. Do any of you guys want to come and help us? I'll tell you what happens next. You have basically a bunch of crickets chirping. No one decides. I guess they're more scared of Rome than Carthage. We don't know why, but then Hannibal's like, screw it, we're going. So while they're in Rome, then the Romans decide, okay, you know what, you're going to play it that way, we're going to come down and attack Carthage. And Hannibal's like, wait, what? You can't steal my move. So they try and get back, but by the time they get there, they are beaten at the Battle of Zara, and so Hannibal comes all the way back down, is beaten at the Battle of Zara, where is it, Zama? Something like that. Skip this part, but, Hannibal comes down, and is beaten, and that ends the Second Punic War, and eventually, a few years later, Hannibal is so disappointed that he commits suicide because he could not fulfill his duty. So then, Rome does the exact same thing as before, except now they say, okay, you cannot declare war on anyone, you can, we're going to steal this money from you, and basically the Third Punic War is just a massacre, honestly. It's just a massacre. The Romans are like, you know what, why do we have Carthage living while we could just easily take it down? So Rome says, Carthage, your citizens better leave because we're going to destroy your city. And the Carthaginians are like, never, we will fight to the very end. And they're so tired, and so basically Rome just comes in, destroys them. It goes so far as putting salt on the soil, because if salt goes on the soil, then nothing can grow. So that's the end of Carthage. The end of all civilization for the Carthaginians is ended there. What else should you know? That's basically the Punic Wars. So now we get to come to another awesomely, actually I wouldn't say awesomely, I just insulted him a few minutes ago, Julius Caesar. So, Julius Caesar was actually, he was pretty wealthy when he was born to a noble family. So he decided to make sort of an ally. He decided to ally himself with this guy named Gnaeus Pompeius, aka Pompey Magnus or Pompey the Great, or however you like to call him. I'm going to call him Pompey. And Pompey is a really great general, and also he allies himself with Crassus, who is the greatest, who is actually the richest man in the world. Yeah, I don't know anyone richer. Richest man in the world at the time. So that term, that union between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus is known as the First Triumvirate. So they make that alliance, and Caesar is basically, he's kind of the worst one there. He's just kind of like the dude that does nothing. Pompey has the military might. Crassus has the wealth. So everything turns out pretty well, except for Caesar at the moment. So Caesar decides, you know what, screw this. I'm gonna go and I'm going to conquer a little area of Gaul. So he keeps conquering and keeps conquering. He spends 5 more years and 5 more years until he conquers all of Gaul. If you don't know what Gaul is modern day France. And he conquers and he conquers. Now, while things are going pretty well for Caesar, it's not going pretty well for everyone else. First of all, Crassus dies in battle. He is killed by the Parthians, so now Mr. Moneybucks isn't there anymore. Then also, Pompey has a wife, and her name is Julia, I think, and she dies. So that was pretty bad for Pompey. So now there's really no connection between Pompey and Caesar. So now there's sort of rivals. So Pompey decides, okay, I want to get rid of the Caesar dude. So he's gonna tell Caesar to come back without his army, and when he does, they will all strip him of his power, and he will be arrested. So Caesar sees his plan, and what he does is he goes with his army. And he famously crosses the Rubicon River. So that's basically, if you cross the Rubicon River with your army, you're basically declaring war on your country. So now, Julius Caesar attacks Rome. Pompey, like a boss, he's like, I'm out of here. He sails all the way. He runs away. He goes to Egypt, and he's like, Egypt, can you help me? And then Egypt's like, sure, but they kill him. Ptolemy the 13th, you know, remember Ptolemy? Yeah, he's still that dynasty is still ruling. So Ptolemy the 13th is like, okay, I killed Pompey. Well, now Caesar's gonna be my best friend because I just killed his enemy. Caesar is definitely not happy. He's actually insulted because Pompey, even though they were enemies, he was still a loyal friend, and he was still like a buddy. So he basically took this opportunity to oust Ptolemy the 13th, not Ptolemy, Ptolemy the 13th, and he kind of befriended Cleopatra. And Cleopatra was actually, okay, she's not what Hollywood makes her out to be. She was a very good ruler, very wise. She knew how to plan things. She was a good military tactician. She knew how things worked. She wasn't just she's not a slut, for lack of another word. So Caesar and Cleopatra rule Egypt, and they have a kid named Caesarion, and so Caesar decides, okay, I am now going to become dictator. He decides he's going to be dictator, and then he's showered with gifts, so he's called dictator for life. And you would stop and think, why would someone give him all these honors? It turns out that the Senate had been overthrown by Caesar, and he would give the officials of the guys he conquered, he'd give them a seat in the Senate, so they'd be really happy, they'd feel really lucky to be on the Senate, so they'd vote for Caesar for anything he chose to do. So they gave him all these honors, and he became dictator for life, and that's when everyone's like, okay, Caesar's getting a bit too much power. And so the liberators, as they call themselves, they were led by Cassius, and they were led by Brutus. And Brutus, remember how I said he was related to Lucius Brutus, and that led to Brutus going, okay, I better do it. I better go kill Caesar. So on March 15, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar is stabbed to death and on the Senate floor. And basically, the liberators say they're doing this because he was a tyrant and that the people already hated Caesar and they thought they were bringing stability. And let me just tell you this, they were wrong. They were so wrong. Very wrong. The people loved Caesar. They were like, Caesar gave him farms, Caesar gave him bread, he gave him public games, so why else would they hate him? So in a couple minutes, Rome is in a state of fury and in chaos and panic, and the liberators are running away, and they decide to go to, they decide to kind of chill outside of Rome, and so along comes three new guys onto the stage. So you have Octavian, an excellent general, an awesome dude, actually the adopted son of Caesar. Then you also have this guy named Mark Antony, who is Caesar's BFF and best friend, chief advisor, if you will. And you also have this third guy named Lepidus, who was just kind of there, wasn't that important. And so then all three of them unite, and this is called the Second Triumvirate. So they all unite. They meet Brutus's army at Philippi, and they basically defeat Brutus, and Brutus commits suicide. End of story. So now everything should go happy, go dandy, except as we proved in the last triumvirate, once the common enemy is defeated, they start coming for each other's throats. So Lepidus tries to go for Sicily but fails, and so they Octavian and Mark Antony kind of kick him out. So now the main rivalry is between Octavian and Mark Antony. So now Mark Antony goes to Egypt, he meets Cleopatra, again falls in love, and then they have kids, and he sticks there and he chills there, And then Octavian is like, okay, if I'm gonna basically, if I'm gonna get rid of this Mark Antony dude, I have to figure out a way how to make the people hate Mark Antony. And so he looked at Cleopatra, and he's like, he's sleeping with Cleopatra. This is not good. In fact, Mark Antony was married already to Octavian's sister. So it's kind of like, man, this is not fair. So they go to war. And at the Battle of Actium, both Cleopatra's forces and Mark Antony's forces are defeated by Octavian, and then they commit suicide. Shakespeare dramatizes this a lot in his play. And then Octavian changes his name to Augustus and becomes the first emperor of Rome, basically. So he creates the Roman Empire. Yay, empire! So no more of that republic crap there. What else do we got? So now we're going to talk about the empire. So let me just... Yeah, we're still 1 page. We're still 3 pages. Well, 2 pages and a half. But whatever. Alright, let's get to it. The Julio-Claudian dynasty was the first dynasty. So I'm going to name you everyone, but then I'm only going to talk about the important ones. So you have Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. Now, Augustus, he was really famous for 1, creating 25 new legions. 2, he had this idea of Romanization, and he wanted to make things more Roman-like. And so he kind of changed the architecture, changed the style, changed everything. He issued the Praetorian Guard, who were considered the bodyguards, if you will, the bodyguards. They would prove to be not a good idea, because they would be the guys who would kind of control the emperors. Let me just give you a piece of advice, whoever's watching this. If you ever have a bodyguard, they are your biggest enemy, in terms if they have any ambitious desires. So like, okay, yeah, they'll protect you from everyone else, but if you don't do what they say, they can just kill you because they're just right there. So it would prove pretty horrible for a couple new future emperors. So then you have then he issues provincial governors and governments. The most famous of which, he didn't issue this one, but an example of a provincial governor is Pontius Pilate. We'll get to him a while later. So then the next guy we have is Tiberius. So Augustus dies a natural death. Tiberius, nothing. He's not that famous. It's possible that he is the emperor in the movie about oh my gosh, I forgot the movie. Man, skip this, Dad. Skip this. Then we have Caligula, and Caligula is what you would call mean. He was just, his most famous words were, let them hate so long as they obey. So like when everyone's like, why are you so mean? He's like, I don't care if they hate me, they just have to obey me. So of course, the Praetorian Guard were like, okay, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. So they kill him. Like I said, bodyguards, not necessarily a good idea. So then they get Claudius, who's actually the uncle of Caligula. And some people say he was weak-willed, some people say he was strong-willed. We don't know, but he was there. His wife was actually would actually be the mother of Nero, but not via Claudius. So she kills him actually. So that's kind of sad. I believe her name is Agrippina, and then you have Nero. Oh boy, here we go. Skip that. So here we have Nero. Nero is very troubled. Nero, his story really begins with the fire of 64, where people say that Nero burned down deliberately started the fire so he could take their land. Although I personally disagree. It was proved that he did help civilians in their time of need. He was also a perfectionist. He wanted to make Rome the most perfect place, in place of the arts, especially the arts. He loved the arts. He loved acting and stuff like that, which is actually not what you're supposed to do if you're an emperor. Because of his massive projects, he got into so much debt, that that he got into a lot of trouble. He went to so many measures of like trying to pay this debt back, from like burning down or raiding temples and stealing all the money, and then he took all the wealthy aristocrats of Rome and he had them executed so he can steal their wealth. Or actually, what he would do is he'd say, I'm about to kill you, but before I kill you, you have to sign this paper that basically allows me to take all your money when you die. So basically, include me in your will. So they have to sign. So they have to sign the paper where they give all their money away, and then they kill them. And so basically, Nero accumulates all this, but he's considered such a madman that eventually the Roman Senate views him as an outlaw, and they say that any man it should be his duty to find Nero and kill him. So Nero's on the run, and he commits suicide. That's all you need to know. Actually, one more thing. There's something in Roman culture called it's called Damnatio Memoriae. I'll write this down at the very top because this is kind of important. Not there. Damnatio Memoriae. And that basically means anything that resembles Nero, anything that says his name, anything that has to do with anything at all with Nero should be destroyed, should be erased. So this would actually prove important later. So now the Julio-Claudian dynasty is dead. They've all lost all their power. So now it's a state of civil war. And civil war after civil war after civil war after civil war. And then we have this dude named Vespasian. And he founds the Flavian dynasty. And so he conquered Jerusalem with Titus, even though his Titus gets the credit for it. He led that expedition, and he also he was a really great general. He also started the Colosseum, which at the time was called the Flavian Amphitheater. Now, the reason why we call it Colosseum today is because there was this giant statue of Nero, which is called the Colossus, right next to where the Flavian Amphitheater was built. So basically, when they destroyed that tower, because of the Damnatio Memoriae, but people didn't know where it was, people would say it was right next to where the Colossus was. So people will go, oh, okay, so that's how we get the name Colosseum. So then he has two kids, Titus and Domitian. Titus is the more important one. He basically, the most famous thing he ever did was conquer Jerusalem and have an arch built for him. Makes me sad here. So then we have the Nervan Antonine dynasty, and this is probably the best. Actually, not necessarily. Well, I'll explain later. We have the best, the best emperors there. So there are 6 members of the Nervan Antonine dynasty, but there are 5 good emperors, which is actually what they're legitimately called, the 5 good emperors. You have Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. The 6th one is Commodus, and I'll explain why I don't like him. The most important ones are Trajan and Hadrian. Trajan, the most famous thing he ever did was conquer the land of Dacia, which is basically Romania, modern-day Romania, and he has this giant column dedicated to him. So when he conquers Dacia and he conquers all these other places like Mesopotamia, he basically expands the Roman Empire to its largest extent. So this guy's pretty important. Then the next thing he does is hands over the role as emperor to Hadrian. And Hadrian, he builds his famous wall separating, separating the barbarian lands from the Roman land. So in Britain, like right here. What else do I have? He creates the Appian Way, which is kind of like the major way to like the major road for Rome. So that's pretty good. And he gives away Mesopotamia. So immediately after Trajan gives up the throne, we already lose the territory. So now it's starting to go downhill a little bit. And the last guy I'm going to talk about is Commodus. And I credit the movie Gladiator because it just shows how crazy Commodus was. He killed all these people. He even got into the arena and fought alongside gladiators, and he was super crazy. He liked to see boys naked, and he went to orgies and all these weird things, and it was super crazy. He eventually got assassinated, so thank goodness. But now things are going to fall, and now I'm going to talk about the fall of the Roman Empire. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about Roman games. So you had the Circus Maximus, you had the gladiators, and the most famous gladiator arena was the Colosseum in Rome. In the morning, you would have on Saturday. In the morning, you would have animals versus humans, or animals versus animals. In the noon, you would have public executions. And in the afternoon, when you would actually have like man versus man, the giant gladiator games where everything's super hype and bloody at the same time, but whatever. So now Trajan is actually really has a lot of famous words to talk about when it comes to these gladiator games. He says these games are necessary for the contentment of the idle masses, which basically means they will do whatever I tell them, or I can be as a horrible ruler as I want. But as long as I give them these games, they'll shut up. It's kind of where the term bread and circuses comes from, but that comes from really what Julius Caesar and Pompey did. So now we're going to talk about the fall. So Diocletian was so we had this huge problem, and so he realized this empire, it's too much. It's too much. It's too much for one guy to rule. So what does he do? Splits it in two. He says he will rule the eastern half, and this guy named Maximian will rule the west half. Maximian is failing. He eventually gets his son, or not son, his descendant, maybe possible. We don't know. Maybe it could be this guy who reconquered his throne, or just took the throne away. We don't know. But this guy's name is Constantine, and Constantine was he's really famous for his Christian ideas. Basically, Constantine in 324 is the West Emperor. So in 313 he issues the Edict of Milan, which basically allows Christianity to thrive. It doesn't make it the official religion. Theodosius will eventually do that. But he basically says Christianity is allowed. Not everyone's sure why he does this. People say it was because his mother was Christian. But the most famous story is that he was on the eve of a battle, and he was worried he was not going to win. And so he saw a cross in the sky, and he said, "Okay, I will do this. I will take my men's shields, I will paint the cross on them, on each of them, and if I win this battle, I will turn Christian." So he does win the battle, so he turns Christian. That's what they say. He builds Constantinople, which is like right here. I don't have it. It would be like right here. It's basically where modern day Byzantium is, modern day Istanbul is, ancient day Byzantium. There we go. Byzantium was a Greek city, by the way. So he built Constantinople, and what else did he do? It's a good question. He builds he also builds St. Peter's Basilica, so that's pretty important. At 325 he has the Council of Nicaea, which basically says how are we going to deal with the heretics. That's basically what he says. the last moments of the Roman Empire are kind of sad because it's just sack after sack after sack. So the Huns in 370, they come. They're led by Attila. They come towards the area, and everyone else is so scared that they just run everywhere, and they start attacking the Roman areas, including the Visigoths, who in 410 sacked the city of Rome, led by Alaric. In 444, the Huns attack Roman lands. They infiltrate the empire, so that's in 444. In 453, Attila dies, and get this, he dies of a nosebleed. It's kind of like, I get a nosebleed, I don't die. I guess you could say, oh, I got a nosebleed, I didn't die, I'm better than Attila than the Hun, so I guess that works. Then the Vandals sack Rome in 455, and once more, Rome suffers its final blow in 476. They are defeated by Odoacer, the guy who's ruling as Romulus Augustus, a teenage boy. Very sad. End of the story of Rome, and that's it. Now, that happened to the west. All this is kind of just done. And let me just include that. Rome's done. The east half, on the other hand, is surviving and is led by Justinian and his wife Theodora. And and this new empire is called the Byzantine Empire. So that's Rome. So we started from the two twins to the monarchy to the republic to Julius Caesar and the Punic Wars and all the different officials, and we talked about what else did we talk about? That's a good question. We talked about the empire, the different emperors, who were the badasses and who weren't. And I think the only real good guy was Augustus. He was the only true emperor. So now the last thing we're going to talk about is Christianity. So back travel all the way to Tiberius's reign, around Tiberius's reign. Remember the second emperor, right after Augustus. So Christianity, we're going to start with the basic simple stuff. Monotheism, which basically means I believe in one God. So this happened in Judea, but it was basically modern day Israel. I think at this time Judea was kind of it was just modern day Israel, right here, except Constantinople was over there. So it's all based on this one dude, Jesus of Nazareth, and he spoke of a heavenly kingdom. There's a heaven and there's like an afterlife, and if you're a good person, you get to go to La La Land and do all these awesome stuff. The Jews thought he was a false prophet. Many people claimed that he was the Messiah, and many traditional Jews are like, no, he's not. So they get really worried about this, and so they tell the Romans, Romans, we don't like this guy. Can you kind of do something about him? And they're like, okay, sure. So they basically, the Romans also found him problematic because he didn't worship the emperor. He worshipped in secret, and he worshipped one God. So that was an issue for them. So the Jews and the Romans united, and the Jews turned Christ in via Judas, and Christ was crucified. Crucifixion was actually one of the most painful tortures and ways of versions of execution that's ever possible, because it turns out I'm just gonna give you a really small detail, but there are two nerves in your wrist. And when you punch, and there are bones there, so when you stick something through there, those nerves those nerves can actually, like, anything not nervy that touches that will be really painful, like horribly painful. So, and the bones were stuck there, so you couldn't really move that much. He was crucified 3 days later. Well, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, 3 days later he was resurrected, and so that's basically the basis of Christianity. So important figures. So one, Peter. Peter was the head disciple, and he was considered the first pope. He helped spread Christianity, went all these places, and the only time he ever stopped was when he was executed by the Romans. Then we have Paul, whose original name was Saul of Tarsus. he was actually responsible for turning in Christians. He's like, this guy's a Christian, Romans, go kill him. And then he's on his way, and he's stopped, there I think he's on the road to Damascus, and he's stopped, and basically he is sort of temporarily blinded, and and God speaks to him, and he decides he will become a devout Christian, changes his name to Paul, and he wrote books and wrote letters and spread Christianity until he got executed by the Romans. Basically, all these guys got executed, which is kind of sad, you know? So then Jerusalem became the headquarters for Christianity, and eventually Rome. But basically, there were writings about Jesus' life, which are called the Gospels, which were written by John, Luke, Mark, and Matthew. I should actually done that one because Matthew's my little brother. I have a little brother named Matthew. So John, Luke, Mark, and Matthew. Persecution. Unfortunately, these guys faced a lot of persecution. Nero actually blamed the fire on the Christians and had them burnt alive. Some say also they were crucified. Diocletian was also a huge hater of Christians. And then Constantine came along and is like, okay, you guys are all good. And Theodosius said, okay, Christianity is now the official religion of the Roman Empire, although there was basically no Roman Empire anymore. Popularity, why was it so popular? Well, they had a merciful God. I mean, if you screwed up with the god of war, like Mars, I mean, you're done. If you screw up with the emperor, you're done. So God has mercy. So God, like the idea is, while you may have turned from God, God has not turned from you. So, and also there's salvation. So like you kill someone, then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. If you repent and you do stuff, then God will save you. So people are like, man, I killed like hundreds of people. So I really feel guilty about them. So if I join this, I'll go to a better life. Eternal life. If you go up to heaven, you enjoy a pleasureful time doing all the little stuff you want, and everything's a happy-go-lucky thing. And it was also very personal. Like when you went to like Jupiter, you wouldn't go, "Hey Jupiter, bro, got a problem here." You know, you went through that. You would have to like be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so like we're not even buddies. We're not even acquaintances," you know. But with God, you had like a special connection. You also had a special connection with Jesus in a way. Like you kind of knew him. And it appealed to all classes and genders. So that's basically why Christianity was super popular. And guys, that's it. That's the first video. So we talked about Greece and everything about Greece. We talked about Rome. We talked about Christianity. So this is the first video. Next episode is going to be about the Dark Ages, and basically we're going to go all the way down to we're going to finish the Renaissance there. Yeah, guys, thank you for watching. In case you wonder, I go to Audi International School, so everything's gonna be chill there. I actually, if you, I'll just, because I'm such a nerd, I actually have created my own Roman name. So, I'd actually like to see this happening, like just walking down on the hall, and then someone go, "Hey, Germanicus, come up." I'm like, okay, that works. So my name is, officially, it is, it's so long to remember. Okay, here we go. We have, Pertinax, Resimer, Germanicus, Audax, Superbus, Maximus. That's my official name. Well, not my official name, but like the name I go by as a classicist. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped. Okay, so I know if you're doing a final review, this isn't very helpful. Well, except it introduces religion a little bit, but maybe it'll make sense later. I mean, after all, he just gave you a list of things you should know. So this does help with that, and also it also provides insight about how everything flows. History is a flowing source of information where things lead to other things, and those things lead to other things, and that's just that's why I like history. So, peace out, guys. Love you guys.